Thank you, Charlotte. And first of all, the important part of the night, the first game just concluded. San Diego State wins 72-71. Except for Monday night. And it is April Fool's Day, and I expected there would be some ham-handed opportunity on the part of some politician here tonight. I'm going to overlook that because I look forward to 5-1, the first day of May. You know, the communists celebrate that as one of their great days, but it's really a great American day. And it used to be that it often was the day of the Kentucky Derby. And my former boss, Ronald Reagan, was a great horseman. And he loved to tell a story about a guy who had a dream that number 5 was his lucky number. So he went out to the track the next day and he got the racing form and he looked at the 5th race. And in the number 5 position was a horse by the name of 5 for 5. So naturally he took every dime he had and put it on the 5th horse in the 5th race. And as you would expect, it finished 5th. I don't know whether any of you have had the opportunity to see Senator John Kennedy or Senator Josh Hawley or some of the other Republicans, Ted Cruz and others in the Senate, examine some of these candidates for the federal judiciary. But last week, John Kennedy had one of the candidates, nominees, not candidates, nominees for the federal appellate court. Now, these circuit courts of appeals are the level immediately below the Supreme Court of the United States. And he doesn't ask the typical questions about your background and this and your views and that. He asks elemental questions, like, what does Article 5 of the Constitution say? This judge had no idea. She literally said, I'm not familiar with that. Of course, Article 5 is the way we amend the Constitution, something that a federal appellate judge might need to know something about. So I reverted, he said, well, how about Article 2? Not familiar with that either. That says something about our educational system. It also says something about the people that Joe Biden is nominating for the federal judiciary who are going to raise their hand and take an oath to uphold a constitution they know nothing about. So I was asked to say a couple of words about education tonight. And I want to ask this question. I won't embarrass any of the judicial candidates because I know they know the answer anyway. But how many times in the United States Constitution does the word education appear? Zero. Zero. So when you think about a federal Department of Education, think about the fact that the federal Constitution doesn't even mention education. Now the state Constitution is a very different thing. As Representative Becker will tell you, a thorough and efficient education is the birthright of every Pennsylvania child under the Constitution of Pennsylvania. We've deliberately set up our educational system to be a state matter governed by, in Pennsylvania, 500, think about that, school boards, ranging from the gigantic one in Philadelphia to some very tiny ones in rural Pennsylvania. And I once had the privilege of serving for several years as the solicitor for the Littlestown School District. So I know Adams County schools a little bit, and some of the smaller, more rural schools as well. And so the first thing that we hear about, of course, is funding. And we just had a case come down from the Commonwealth Court on the constitutionality of the state funding formula. What's interesting about that is that Judge Cohen-Jubileer did not tell the General Assembly how to fix the problem that she says exists with an unconstitutional scheme for funding local schools. But you know, the thing that troubles me is that the answer to the woke left is always more money. We spend in Pennsylvania about $30 billion, actually it's north of $30 billion on education. It's the #1 item in the state budget. And Representative Becker said, wait, we don't spend that much at the state level. But all spending combined, state, federal, and local, is over $30 billion. And so the question has to be, how much more would be enough to those that constantly want to dig deeper into the pockets of taxpayers? And sadly, the thing that we don't hear with the constant drumbeat for more and more and more spending is for more and more and more accountability. And that is, in my judgment, a tragedy. And the second thing we hear about is control over education. The fact that Dr. Joyce and his congressional colleagues find it necessary to codify what is not only common sense, but the God-given order of families and children is really staggering when you start to think about it. If parents aren't in charge of education, we've got a real problem. I remember once upon a time, Bill Bennett, many of you know, former Secretary of Education Bill Bennett, was on a television program with a Democrat congressman, and she was making the case for government control of our children. And he said, you really mean to tell me that some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. knows better for my children how they should be educated than I do? And she said, well, you know, you're the Secretary of Education. He said, how about the typical family? Let's just pretend I'm a typical family, not the Secretary of Education. I'm just an ordinary American parent. Do you really believe that some bureaucrat knows better for my children than I do? And she said, well, yeah. And I remember there's a great pregnant pause, and he looked her in the eye and he said, tell me their names. Tell me their names. Because that really is at the core and the crux of control over education. If parents aren't in charge, government bureaucrats are, and we all suffer. And so when parents aren't in charge, what do we get? We get critical race theory, we get the 1619 movement, we get all of this garbage that is indoctrination, not education. And we see it across the landscape in Pennsylvania and across the landscape in our country. And they'll tell you, oh no, we don't teach that here. But tucked into that curriculum is exactly what the woke left wants our children to be indoctrinated with. And that is why these school board elections this year and in the future are so incredibly important. We used to think of them as down ballot races. They weren't the ones that got paid the attention in the media or in our discussions in dinners like tonight. But they have to be going forward. And I know I promised Charlotte to only talk for about 40 minutes, so I'll wrap it up here. She's getting nervous, I can see that. She held up a little sign that said, Dan Mouth. I don't know. But let me just say one other thing about curriculum. And it's been touched on here tonight, and that is the issue of gender identity in sports. When I got done my playing career, I coached for a while. And I coached some pretty elite athletes. I had the privilege of doing that. And the last assignment I had was coaching AAU women. I'd never coached girls basketball before, and I got to tell you, it was a fabulous experience. They're far easier to coach than men. And the thing about basketball is we play with 5 people. If you put 2 or 3 biological men onto that court, you're shoving 2 or 3 women off of that court. And when you put them on the bench, you're pushing 2 or 3 or 4 women off the end of the bench out of the program completely. They won't have the opportunity to play or participate. They won't have the opportunity to get those scholarships that come as a result of Title IX. They won't have the opportunity to have all the work and dedication and sweat and toil that they put into their sport realized because biological males are taking their place. And somehow, pardon me, the woke left doesn't think that that's enough. All of us, I hope, do. And I hope that all of us are committed. And please, would the people running for school board just stand one more time for a second? Please, just stand up.
I'm going to jump in on his limelight here. Bermudian Springs School District, Jen Goldhahn, Daniel Chubb, and Lisa Marie Webb. Conewaga Valley School District, Meredith Miller, Lindsay Krug, and April Swope. Gettysburg School District, Michael Dickerson, Barbara Sonnenfeld, Al Moyer, and Michelle Snyders. Fairfield School District, there are 0 Republicans running in Fairfield. There are 5 positions on the ballot. Not 1 Republican is running. If you know someone, contact me, and we can field a write-in candidate. We need, nobody knows what's going on in Fairfield, but we need some Republicans running. Littlestown, Fred Miller, Nick Lovell, and Janelle Wrestler. Upper Adams School District, Tricia Plank, Lauren Lustig, and Maria, I'm gonna muck this up, I'm so sorry, Jala. Okay, that's it.
And let me just say this while you're here. Proof that you have a fabulous chair is that she so gently said, Charlie, your time is up. It's been great to be with you. But these